Welcome to, I believe, what is the part of the MiSTer video sequence that I'm actually recording. We were watching some demos, uncensored, boost demo. Let's just do the directory. The demo. Okay, so let's load the demo and let's run the demo. Oh yeah, and then you think, that's interesting. You think, oh my God, it's not working. And then, oh my God. Some demos would actually kick you into some sort of fake machine monitor and you would think, oh my God, it's wrong, it's crashed, because sometimes that would happen. And yeah, this basically just destroys your TV set, and then just yeah. And there's just a ton of these demos. They just go on for hours and hours. And let's go check out the Amiga. It's the Mini MIG. For me, a big reason to get one of these systems actually was the fact that it actually is a pretty good Amiga clone. The precursor to the MiSTer was the MiST, and it was a good Atari ST, but also Amiga clone. It also has a Mini MIG port. Basically, what it allows you to do is have a souped up Amiga 1200. Some sorts. You could have graphics that are similar to those found in the expansion cards that are found in the 2000, 3000, and 4000 series of systems. Yeah, and with using this high resolution and having like 260 megabytes of RAM and 2 megabytes of graphics memory available, you have these fancy windowing systems that are very similar to Windows. And yeah, there's just a ton of stuff that you can do, you know, with a higher resolution and a you could browse the internet with these as well, and there's a ton of demos, and I've downloaded some, but perhaps it's good to just Jaeger time, Swan Song, Chaotic, run demo. Let's see how that works. The network stack has been stopped. So it moves towards the 15 kilohertz signal, which is basically the regular CRT TV. And it's an Amiga 1200 with AGA chipset. And yeah, you can have hard drives, you can have disk drives. Yeah, you can basically use it in a very similar fashion to a real Amiga 1200 or 500. There's all sorts of software sets available for it. WHD load works. And it's just now the thing with watching Amiga demos also is the samples used, because sometimes just a few seconds of sample may be picked up by some sort of weird out of whack copyright system. Now, as you can see, as you can see, this actually would happen on normal Amigas as well. But perhaps it's best to just see if we can have Mega AGS, a type of Mega AGS thing load. System, okay, kick, Mega AGS, this one, kickstart, and just go to the drives and then Amiga IDS. Yeah, so this should allow it to boot. Now, the way this system actually saves different configurations, it's actually not the best. So this is an older version of Amiga ADS, but you can actually have games per year, genre. I think this is up to 2022. Gamographies, Hall of Fame, shoot 'em ups, Iridium, Silkworm, Iridium 2, racing games. Yeah, there's all sorts of, Buggy Boy, for example. Test drive. Vroom. And of course the demo scene. All-time favorites. Desert Dream. Extension. Interference. I think this might be cool. Germany. OCS. Let's check that out. So it uses WHD load. And yeah, I mean, using a real system, using a real Amiga still is quite preferable, because they're not perfect, these emulations, but they do get the job done, and often they're actually pretty good. Now, letters like that, and especially sounds like this is just quintessential Amiga music. You know, these I always get this Kefren's reference. And this was the computer that came after the Commodore 64. So yeah, quite a difference. The thing is, buying floppy disks for this system was just hugely expensive. A box of 10 3.5-inch disks would actually be like 20 or 25 euros, guilders. And a box of 10 5.25-inch discs, you could use both sides if you notch them, would be like $9.95. And with the amount of money at my disposal, well, I was faced with two things. The C64 is getting long in the tooth. The Amiga 500 was becoming very affordable. It came with a disk drive. You had an all-in-one package, and but the thing is, I didn't have any software for it, so I had to buy disks. I had to buy software or swap, copy, party those. And I had friends that had Amigas, and I could copy software, but these disks were just crazily expensive. And for me, buying a 1541 disk drive, which I got actually quite late in the life of the Amiga, the Commodore 64, was actually much more prudent to get than an Amiga, because I would not be able to afford much software, and I did not have the place to to be able to have both out and use it. And what's the point of getting a new system if you don't have any software for it? And I could see myself using the BASIC and the speech program, and yeah, just having a few games also makes you focus on specific games perhaps more. You know, you are more inclined to finish a single game if you just have one game than if you have a choice of many games. And let's check that. I hope it works. Because I moved around a couple of files, and these configuration files, I would like to have more. I would like to have more. A better menu system for actually naming the configurations and being able to tell what's in them, but that's not really possible. What the Amiga also could do, the Amiga 1200, is actually emulate a Macintosh. And at the time, I actually was using real Macintosh machines. One of the professors in school and my sister was doing a graphical design. She's a graphics artist. And one of the professors, one of the surgeons, vascular surgeons, and I was working on a project as a student assistant, and he gave me a ton of his old Macs, and my sister could use them. And so I had LCs, LC2s, I had Quadras, I even had a PowerPC system which went to my sister, but on the Amiga, you could actually run 68K software, and there's games and applications that you can just use and run. A lot of them work really well. Cubase, for example. And they actually work surprisingly well. And you have Word, WordPerfect, Claris works. I believe also some demo stuff like Expander, Virtual Desktop, Toasted. You even have a Mac Mini on the. But games. There's this game that is a pretty good Tempest clone, Arachi, and I hope it's here. I don't think it is. I was playing that a lot. Oh, Balderdash. Of course, that's a version of Balderdash. And then it just froze the system. Well, that's something that happens if you emulate. Let's see if it's possible to actually run that. And of course, it being emulation, the way this was created was that the code itself actually runs on the processor, but that the video output and stuff is actually done on the Amiga. So the Amiga is actually doing some extra work, but the code itself, yeah, so it's just, you know, if the hard drive, the emulated hard drive can't keep up, sometimes it just crashes. But this just runs just as fast as on my Quadro or LC. So this actually is a very nice way to, yeah, and then I'm stuck, to play Amiga for, what is it? Oh, and I have to wait. Can I do the mouse thing? Apple quit. Let's get out of there. The Commodore PET. That's an awesome system, and it's a very unique system, and I believe it's also from 1977, or perhaps even earlier. Let's check that out. 1977 also, yeah. And it basically has the same processor as the Commodore 64. It actually is possible to use PET software on the Commodore 64. There's a way to emulate the PET if you poke the basic interpreter into a different address space, because then most of anything that you do on the PET can actually work on the Commodore 64 as well, provided you use basic 2.0 commands and not basic 4.0 commands, because yeah, basic 2 on the Commodore 64 was less advanced, I think, than the Commodore 64. So I think we have some demos. Back to PET, I showed that, but I'm not sure if these actually require a different screen. So it may be that these are just not working correctly, because you need a different color mode. Now I'm not sure if there's a way to set that screen, I'm not sure. But yeah, not all would Campo winner run. Downloaded some demos, but some will have yeah, this also, this is some sort of scroll, but yeah, so it uses a different way to set the screen, which I am not going to do right now. And then we have the Commodore VIC-20, which is a machine from 1980. I think I've set the resolution, the scan lines I've turned on. And there's this, it's a very difficult machine to use, because it does use a VIC chip, which is the precursor to the VIC-2 found on the Commodore 64, but it only has 3.5K of RAM, and the layout of the system is just totally different, and the way that cartridges and programs are loaded into the system, it's just a bit of a nightmare. But it's a good thing that it also supports the Mega card, which is it's the precursor to the card that I got for my VIC-20 just a while ago, which is the penultimate, and this actually has a ton of games on it that are very recognizable. Let me see, for example, and this is very easy to navigate, I think Galaksija or something like that. Yeah, Galaksija. And let's just press F1, F1. Now I think the VIC games, they look nicer if they have these scan lines. because it creates certain extra information sometimes that just isn't found in the blockiness of the graphics. But I can imagine people just wanting the default output just have all the blocks, just as they are for the other systems. Now the VIC also doesn't have a SID chip. It has a different sound output unit, and I think the VIC actually is responsible for doing that as well. I may be mistaken. The VIC-20 actually was the system I was saving up for. It was either an Atari 600 XL, or a VIC-20 that I was able to save up for. Of course, those were the more limited machines, but yeah, my goal was to program them and program games on them. And I never had to buy a VIC or an Atari because Mom actually bought us a Commodore 64. Very, very quickly after it came out, actually. So that actually is, actually quite interesting. Now, a lot of these systems, of course, I have. You know, they're around. They're around in the game room, and they're stored in the attic or in the garage. But to be able to just have a little box do a hardware representation of these old systems is quite something. And I got an extra life. And yeah, it does feel different to emulation, because with the field-programmable gate array, the entire hardware is simulated in real time. It's actually recreated, logically recreated by this FPGA chip. And basically what that means is that everything, you know, a computer has a cycle, an up signal, down signal, and all the chips and all the components respond to that. It's just, yeah, it's just like a heartbeat almost. And everything happens simultaneously. And if you look at most emulators, most software emulators, they don't have a way to have everything happen simultaneously. If your system is fast enough, you can fake simultaneous things, but you have to program these in sequence or use as many threads as there are simultaneous events to take care of. So in a way, it's very hard to have a F1 is, I believe, what is it? No, just reset. In a way, it's actually very difficult to make one of these simulated systems behave in exactly the same way as an emulated system, in exactly the same way as a real hardware system. And with this, with the FPGA implementation, it's actually possible to make a system pretty much behave like it actually would, just due to the fact that everything is happening simultaneously. So even if you are very close to the hardware and the hardware just does what it's supposed to do, then most often the system will just have the same quirks as as the real system would have. Well, now this also is not using any sprites. It's just using changed character set graphics. And you have to put it in perspective. You would think, oh, this is just a severely limited machine. But in fact, this is pretty much a bit of a contemporary to the VCS. And or it was supposed to be. And that has very limited graphical capabilities. And compared to a VCS, this VIC system is just amazing. It's just capable of doing so much things that, yeah, very defined graphics. And so, yeah, I mean, if you know how to play Dash and Donkey Kong, you'll know how this works. And then we have the Edsac, which also is a system that I'm not familiar with, and it's supposedly it's created in a very so tape loader, Edsac, games, demos, tapes, cubes. Yeah, and then I'm not sure you can just use function keys or so. This is the printout, automatic calculator. You know, if you knew this system back in the day, for the much older people, this actually would be quite interesting. It is, but it's not something I am familiar with. Memory size, color basic. So this may actually be Abenteuerland, Afrika, basic code, blues maker, chopper. Now, I'm not sure, does load work? No, C load. And it might actually load in something. It might not. Yeah, often these basics, they would just be so different, you know, but there were similarities, you know. A lot of these systems used C load to load in stuff from tape, but there would be a difference between loading in a basic file or a binary file. Sometimes you would only be able to run binary files if you booted into them, or you would only be able to load them in if you indicated you were loading a binary file instead of a basic file. Basic files often were ASCII type text files, which basically contain the text that the basic program was contained of. A lot of systems, they used sort of mnemonic codes, you know, a 2-character code to indicate a specific command. So the saved data was much smaller than the actual typed in letters. I don't think this is actually working. Oh, perhaps I should press play. This does remind me a lot of the TRS-80s we had in school. Yeah, so this is nonsensical. So this won't be able to run. So yeah, weird. The Einstein. Tatung Einstein. Also a very weird system that I have not much experience with. I may be able to look something up, but I may also not be able to look something up. I don't think I have any documentation on this. I've printed out quite a fair bit of of how to use these old systems if I didn't have any personal experience using them back in the day. And it was a bit of my thing to be able to use all these systems. They would often have them on display in the local library, and games. Druid, perhaps just reset and it might boot into it. Often a lot of ways to deal with these was actually very similar. There were similarities. So if you just used a logic approach, you would be able, or you could get prompts, but you would be able to get stuff up and running. But it was much more diverse, you know, hardware-wise, software-wise, peripheral-wise, just the way it looked, than today's PCs. You know, you have Macs, you have PCs, you have Windows, you have Linux. I think Linux is probably one of the most diverse systems out there. You could have, you know, very many different windowing systems, command lines. And yeah, and this, just these old systems, they also have very different things. Now, I don't think this is going to work. What also is a thing is that you really need to be patient with these old devices. But yeah, let's move on to another. And I think this is the Acorn Electron, which is also a BBC microcomputer-like device. It had a lower amount of memory. Some of its software, it's actually the cheap home version of the BBC Micro, but that was just hugely expensive. And this is the home user version that also used a lot of tapes, and it had less memory, and it was slightly different. So not all software ran, and a fair bit of software did run, but yeah, it was just very Arcadians, for example. That's the game that we just played on, and this is just one of these discs. And I'm not sure if the joystick will actually work. And just play Arcadians. So it is different. May actually even be black and white. So basically, this is the same game as the BBC Micro game, but as it did have much less memory, what they got away with sometimes is that they actually used part of the screen memory in order to still run the game on this system with lower set of memory. They would use different graphics, and they would just have the data display on the screen as some sort of background jitter. So yeah, this is just, the best way, the easiest way to just use it. And resetting often didn't work properly. The Galaksija, this is also a Russian computer, I think. And yeah, type old before loading. I think if you turn it back on right away, just if you turn it on and you just load, it's okay. But if you have a different bit of software in it, it might ruin it. But I've not been very successful at getting stuff running. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know much about the system. You could check it out. Homelab Series. I think those were relatively modern systems that I'm not sure if it's already in there or if you have to put in C load or load. And then play. So a lot of these, they did function very similarly. So I mean, you know, just there's a basic, and often you would use the command load, and sometimes with quotes and a specific name. And yeah, it might be possible that this is just a basic program. Yeah. And escape might stop the listing. No. So we'll just let it scroll by. And there's something specific. I see that you can print character string and then two values separated with a comma. So it might be that you could actually print a character, a specific character, and also a color. Caret as no, I think it's instructions. I don't want instructions. Yeah, and it's just not something I'm able to recognize. This probably is very similar to the TRS based systems. Again, I am let me see, TRS 80, load cassette. But it doesn't even boot into some sort of normal prompt. So it may be that my core just isn't good enough, or what is it? All right, and then this interesting thing. Trailblazers, and then L to load tape. So we'll just now, if you want to check out which core this is or have more information, I'd advise you to check out the MiSTer website, the GitHub. It'll show you the various systems and have more documentation available for you. And I did look up certain systems, but yeah, as I'm not familiar with all of them, it's not as easy to just get it up and running. So one player, two player, play computer, one player. Cactuses, yeah, I think this one is one of this wraparound. No. So I guess this is just two gunslingers that just are shooting at each other. Oh, no, this is just some sort of, how do you say that? This is just a snake game. where you just, I'm not sure if you have to destroy the cactus or, no, it's unfamiliar what this actually entails. The Jupiter Ace. Interesting system. I think I have some documentation on it. Let me find out. The Jupiter Ace. They all had these wonderful, crazy, weird names. Jupiter Ace, a system from 1982. It has a keyboard layout that is very similar to that of the Spectrum. It also has a Z80 processor. It had 1K of RAM. So this core actually provides more, but it's like a ZX80 or ZX81 times 1000. So load ACE files. Let's do an ACE file. So jcal set maze size play. And then you have a layout of the maze, and then it displays in a very similar fashion to that maze game on the ZX81. It displays a 3D maze. Now it doesn't come with any dinosaurs attacking you. Quit. New. So yeah, it's a bit Spectrum-like, you know, with the prompt underneath. And let's see if I can load in another of these games. Ace Avoider, Ace Invaders. Yeah, some sort of Space Invaders clone, but it seems to just run. So I guess you're able to just control this little dot until they crash into you. Interesting stuff. Alien Defender. Run. No, it's just, yeah. Of course, a fair few of these systems will be more fledged out. Laser, for example, is very 3D pyramids. This laser thing, I mean, this looks like a Coca-Cola computer. C-load. And then we might actually have to press any key or somehow. Oh yeah. The Lynx, which also is a quite a different system. Centipede, not yet implemented. Okay, so there's no way to load tapes. A Digger Man. It's a mystery to me. The M5. I have all sorts of memory expansion cartridge, basic one, tape input, load file, sort file, games, Sidewinder, load, no, list. So yeah, without documentation, not every one of these systems actually is as intuitive to use. And of course, I mean, I have these all on the card. Of course, they're only actually fun if you actually know the system, if you're familiar with them. And some of the cores, they're just more of a demos state, especially these old computer cores if there's not a lot of users. And this is another one. This is a Mac Mini or a Mac Plus, the first Apple Macintosh computer. It is more capable than a real Mac. It's even a Mac SE. You can have more memory available to you. Let me see. Just amazing how similar this all looks. Yeah, I have 4 megabytes available. And there's all sorts of black and white software that actually works pretty well on this system, but like Shuffle Puck Cafe or what have you. So I could actually see if I can mount up a floppy. Dark Castle. Shuffle Puck Cafe is actually yeah. Shuffle Puck Cafe 1. So it'll probably show up next to it, and you'll be able to run it. And back at university, actually, they had Laserdisc software, Laserdisc players with educational software that actually was controlled over an interface from a Mac Plus. And the Mac Plus came with a hard drive, 10 megabytes, I believe. And it came with a laser printer. And at one point in late 90s, I got to take it home. And then I moved and I stored it temporarily in my parents' attic. And yes, you'll know they threw it out. So yeah, that's actually quite obnoxious. It had Word on it. Yeah, and this was just very. I like Shuffle Puck for real, but yeah, I just had a hard time playing this because it's just so fast. But it's nice to see these high-res graphics because the screen was very tiny, but the graphics were actually very nice. So this is the Mattel Aquarius, which also is in a way Texas Instrument-like. I find, at least the way the prompt looks and the fonts. And there's a chess game, number of players 0, then it plays itself. Skill level 1. Now chess and card games were just the rage back in the day because that was the only oh, you have to press. I just want to see how it goes and not press any key. Just let the thing move and play itself. And then we have the MSX. There's a whole range of systems capable. It was, I believe it came out in 1983, a year after the Commodore 64. And it was a, let me see, put 1 gigabyte and then just reset. It came out in 83 as MSX1 standard, and basically it was a conglomerate of mostly Asian companies, computer companies, and Microsoft, in order to mitigate the mess that we've been going through in the last bit of the video with all these computer systems not being very compatible. And this is the MiSTer VHD 2020, which is not the latest actually. And let me see if I can mount a VHD 3 GB alternative. So yeah, it was a whole, no, this is an older version even. I'm using this on my Sony 7P system from an SSD SCC card. Let me see, the 1 GB then, and then just reset. I think that this is the latest. And yeah, it's a whole range of systems, and it was a way to just have more computers running the same software and sticking to a certain set of rules, basically. Now, software came on cassettes, came on ROM cartridges, floppies, and this bit of software, this system on more advanced MSX systems, because you had MSX, just the regular MSX, MSX2, MSX2 Plus, MSX3. Oh, we could use the demonstration. I won't have to play. That's actually interesting. Can I? Can't I? Have one? Oh, I'll play. So this is, Hero. A lot of these Activision games also came out for the MSX, and it's quite similar to a lot of the other Z80 based systems, but it has sprites, it has sounds. It might be more closely related to an Amstrad than it would be to a Spectrum, for example. A lot of software came out for the system. Oops. A whole lot of software, and especially in Asia, there were a ton of excellent games out for it. In Europe, we would have lazy ports, the phenomena of lazy ports, and that's a phenomenon where they would basically quickly port over a ZX Spectrum game, and because the MSX does things a little differently, especially the graphics, often the speed wasn't there. And yeah, basically it said, now this bload command you saw flashing by, the MSX really is one of these systems that you would have to indicate whether or not you load in a basic file or a machine code file, and you would use the command bload with the name and then $R in order to execute a binary. And I'm not sure if this actually runs. Again, one does need to be patient. I don't think it actually runs. Yeah, I have a Toshiba MSX1. I have a Sony MSX2 Plus. I have a Sony MSX2 system. I've got various Philips systems, and I actually sold off a lot of MSX systems to a collector who was taking very good care of these systems. But yeah, I've just had multiple of the same, and yeah, you can actually have too many of these systems. So yeah, these are cassette games. Basically, these are mostly games found in Europe, and there's also a demo scene on the MSX. Sometimes there would be just demos of games, not necessarily demos from the demo scene. And I think, yeah, this is just a basic file and stuff. But there are demo scene demos, and some of them are actually quite interesting. And I do have quite a few of them, but I can't see them here in this. Perhaps in the on the other this game around MSX2, and what's interesting is let's do Boulder Dash. This is all MSX2, I think. Yes. Oh, Bubble. That's also quite interesting. We've had enough of Bubble, but yeah, it'll just load in the RAM into memory at a certain specific spot, and then it'll just execute the RAM initialization routine, and then it'll just play. The fact that the MSX came with such a large bit of memory in conjunction with flash memory, it allows the system to just basically allows the system itself to basically load in these ROM files from storage media. And a lot of these cutesy single screen arcade games. This is basically what the Coleco, the MSX, are famous for. And there's also a different version of the emulator that behaves more like let me see the hit bit, and then the firmware, and then there it is. It should say 256. Yeah. So the order in which you run these things. So this basically is like my Sony MSX2 system, and the BASIC is very close to GBASIC, GW BASIC found on the MS-DOS system, and the MSX-DOS really is very closely similar to MS-DOS. Let's see if I can select a ROM, load a ROM, and then Mega ROMs, or type outrun Nemesis. Yeah, and then you would have to check out which mapper actually is the right one and stuff. So yeah, that's if you know what you're doing and you know the system very well, then it actually is not bad. Mounted image. Yeah, this is also an MSX or a MultiComp, a multi-system type of system that you can use, which I'm not very familiar with. This is Economics multi-system. It does have some demos going, but there's not much software out, at least available. I believe it's also a Z80 based system. A lot of these, and then the Ondra SPO 186, which also, the Ondra, it really sounds amazing. I believe this was also an educational system from Eastern Europe, and you see that there's a Tesla. There's a few variants capable, but there's no way to get any software into it. So the Orao, Boulder Dash, I'm not sure if it's like C load or load, R, list. I'm really not sure how to reset, load tape, Boulder Dash, and then what do you do? Do I have any information? Orao. Power and system, type BC to enter basic. Okay. Mem size, just, and then the file you want to load. And then run. So the keyboard of the Arao, a system from 1984, looks very similar to that of the PET. And it has function keys for function keys and cursor keys, but yeah, it's just its own weird little machine. So it comes with basic, and you just type in basic and memory size like that. And then just try to load in a tape. Demo 1. List, run. Doesn't do much, does it? The Auric Atmos. You have the Auric 1 and the Auric Atmos from 1982, which is a very nice machine, and it has black keys and bright red special colored keys. So it has a similar vibe to the BBC Micro and one of the Archimedes machines. F10 is a warm start. F11, you boot a disk image if you have selected that. So load a tape file. Tape file, not sure if loading a tape file is actually possible. Adventure in Time, Amor's Pilar. And I'm not sure if load, C load, no, load. No, it's, and let me see if there's any way to load in tapes. I think it uses disks primarily. Or they're MFM formats. I'm not sure. Disks. Let's disk. Defense Force, and then just reset and apply. insert system disk, chopper. So a lot of them don't have the correct format, the Terasic ROM. So yeah, again, a system that you have to be familiar with, otherwise you won't be able to use it. Now this may actually come as a surprise, or not, that the MiSTer FPGA is actually such a capable machine that it's actually capable of emulating a PC DX33 SX33, but it doesn't have any floating point processor. It does SVJ, Sound Blaster, it has MIDI out, and it does support the joystick. So I did include some games, for example Hexen, which is a first-person adventure shooter type game, which I play a lot actually, and I really like it. It's from id Software. I prefer it over Doom actually. And it really is one of the more nicer looking games. And as you can see, you just walk around, pick up extras, smash stuff, and just check. I hear another of these critters, but I may be mistaken. But as you can see, it runs pretty well. So just enter a door. I mean, it does run a lot better on my retro-based system, my Pentium 3-based system, because yeah, this is of course a 486, which, and I believe if you walk over here, then actually you'll get fired upon. And you'll die if you are hurt. Let's try to die. Oh, yeah. So there's a ton of software that actually will work, and it is more compatible than DOSBox in certain areas. Let me see. Of course, it is possible to emulate a Commodore 64. And this actually is one of the first Commodore 64 game systems that I took with me on a floppy drive. And I was teaching medical computer science as a student assistant. And I would have this on a floppy disk with some games. And let me see, joystick, keyboard, and tape. I would just, and then load. And it on a 486, it would be full speed. Up key, down, left, right, fast, yes. And then F1 to play probably. So to be able to just play Commodore 64 games on one of these 486 machines that were there, just by booting from a floppy, was just amazing. And the internet wasn't the internet back then as it is now. So a lot of the software actually I got from from an FTP server in Finland, FTP FUNET V. Yeah, but as you can see, it's actually a very, very decent version of Frogger. F10 gets you back, options, and you can reset. Let me see, tape. I believe this is a demo I created myself. Actually, someone accused me of being a lamer, which I of course did not like. So I created this, and just to be able to. And this is also. Let me see. This is another one. Yeah, with a different scroll, or this perhaps is the same tape. And this one then. Oh yeah, this is a different one with, and of course everybody was using these scrolling things. So this basically was what the demo creators were creating. And yeah, basically back then it was pretty much like a, oh, and this also is, I use a glowing routine, and it's the same routine I also use for color bars, but I don't do the interrupt thing because, and you can actually do color bars in the scrolling thing, but yeah. So I quickly threw these together just to show you that I was capable of programming the computer. Yeah, but as you can see, quite a proficient emulator, you know. And if you exit it, F10, quit, options, options, help. Monitor. So it had a built-in it had a built-in monitor, and yeah, and then basically I'm in basic right now. So there's different things that I can run. For example, there's this Windows 3.11 that I can run. And the rest of the software remains the same. The second drive is just a drive that I use for in conjunction with a lot of the operating systems. So basically, you have Windows 3.1, and I think the screen, so it has a MIDI mapper, and I think that the screen actually is 16 colors, and of course Minesweeper and Solitaire. Windows did improve over time, and the Windows session, not sure what is on here. Not much, just Windows